Conceal your intentions. Keep people off balance and in the dark by never revealing the purpose behind your actions. If they have no clue what you are up to, they cannot prepare a defense. Guide them far enough down the wrong path, envelope them in enough smoke, and by the time they realize your intentions, it will be too late. Deception is always the best strategy, but the best deceptions require a screen of smoke to distract people's attention from your real purpose. The bland exterior, like the unreadable poker face, is often the perfect smoke screen, hiding your intentions behind the comfortable and familiar. If you lead the sucker down a familiar path, he won't catch on when you lead him into a trap. Observance of the law. In 1910, a Mr. Sam Giesel of Chicago sold his warehouse business for close to 1 million. He settled down to semi-retirement and the managing of his many properties. But deep inside, he itched for the old days of deal making. One day, a young man named Joseph Weil visited his office, wanting to buy an apartment he had up for sale. Giselle explained the terms. The price was 8,000, but he only required a down payment of 2,000. Wales said he would sleep on it, but he came back the following day and offered to pay the full 8,000 in cash. If Giselle could wait a couple of days until a deal Wales was working on came through. Even in semi-retirement, a clever businessman like Giselle was curious as to how Whale would be able to come up with so much cash, roughly $150,000 today, so quickly. Whale seemed reluctant to say and quickly changed the subject, but Giselle was persistent. Finally, after assurances of confidentiality, Whale told Giselle the following story. Whale's uncle was the secretary of a coterie of multimillionaire financiers. These wealthy men had purchased a hunting lodge in Michigan 10 years ago at a cheap price. They had not used the lodge for a few years, so they had decided to sell it and had asked Wales' uncle to get whatever he could for it. For reasons, good reasons of his own, the uncle had been nursing a grudge against the millionaires for years. This was his chance to get back at them. He would sell the property for 35,000 to a set-up man whom it was Will's job to find. The financiers were too wealthy to worry about this low price. The setup man would then turn around and sell the property again for its real price, around 155,000. The uncle, Well, and the third man would split the profit from this second sale. It was all legal and for a good cause, the uncle's justice retribution. Giselle had heard enough. He wanted to be the setup buyer. Whale was reluctant to involve him, but Giselle would not back down. The idea of a large profit plus a little adventure had him champing at the bit. Whale explained that Giselle would have to put up the 35 in cash to pay the deal off. Giselle, a millionaire, said he could get the money with a snap of his fingers. Whale finally relented and agreed to arrange a meeting between the uncle, Giselle, and the financiers in the town of Galesburg, Illinois. On the train ride to Galesburg, Giselle met the uncle, an impressive man with whom he avidly discussed business. Whale also brought along a companion, a somewhat punchy man named George Gross. Whale explained to Giselle that he himself was a boxing trainer, that Gross was one of the promising prize fighters he trained, and that he had asked Gross to come along to make sure the fighter stayed in shape. For a promising fighter, Gross was unimpressive looking. He had grey hair and a beer belly, but Giselle was so excited about the deal that he didn't really think about the man's flabby appearance. Once in Galesburg, Whale and his uncle went to fetch the financiers while Giselle waited in a hotel room with Gross, who promptly put on his boxing trunks. As Giselle had watched, Gross began to shadow box. Distracted as he was, Giselle ignored how badly the boxer wheezed after a few minutes of exercise, although his style seemed real enough. An hour later, Whale and his uncle reappeared with the financiers, an impressive and intimidating group of men, all wearing fancy suits. The meeting went well, and the financiers agreed to sell the lodge to Giselle, who had already had the 35,000 wired to a local bank. This minor business now settled, the financiers sat back in their chairs and began to banter about high finance, throwing out the name J.P. Morgan as if they knew the man. Finally, one of them noticed the boxer in the corner of the room. Whale explained what he was doing there. The financier countered that he too had a boxer in his entourage, whom he named Whale, laughed brazenly, and exclaimed that his man could easily knock out their man. Conversation escalated into argument. In the heat of passion, Whale challenged the men to a bet. The financiers eagerly agreed and left to get their man ready for a fight the next day. As soon as they had left, the uncle yelled at Whale right in front of Giselle. They did not have enough money to bet with, and once the financiers discovered this, the uncle would be fired. Whale apologized for getting him in this mess, but he had a plan. He knew the other boxer well, and with a little bribe, they could fix the fight. But where would the money come from for the bet? The uncle replied, without it, they were as good as dead. Finally, Giselle had heard enough, and willing to jeopardize his deal with any ill will, he offered his own 35,000 cash for part of the bet. Even if he lost that, he would wire for more money and still make a profit on the sale of the lodge. The uncle and nephew thanked him with their own 15,000 and Giselle's 35,000. They would manage to have enough for the bet. That evening, as Giselle watched the two boxers rehearse the fix in a hotel room, his mind reeled at the killing he was going to make from the boxing match and the sale of the lodge. The fight took place in a gym the next day. Whale handled the cash, which was placed for security in a locked box. Everything was proceeding as planned in the hotel room. The financiers were looking glum at how badly their fighter was doing, and Giselle was dreaming about the easy money he was about to make. Then suddenly, a wild swing by the financier's fighter hit Gross hard in the face, knocking him out. When he hit the canvas, blood spurted from his mouth. He coughed, then lay still. One of the financiers, a former doctor, checked his pulse. He was dead. The millionaires panicked. Everyone had to get out before the police arrived. They could all be charged with murder. Terrified, Giselle hightailed it out of the gym and back to Chicago, leaving behind his 35,000, which he was only too glad to forget, for it seemed a small price to pay to avoid being implicated in a crime. He never wanted to see Whale or any of the others again. After Giselle scurried out, Gross stood up under his own steam. The blood that had spurted from his mouth came from a bowl filled with chicken blood and hot water that he had hidden in his cheek. The whole affair had been masterminded by Will, better known as the Yellow Kid, one of the most creative con artists in the history. Whale split the 35,000 with the financiers and the boxers, a fellow con artist. A nice little profit for a new day's work.